Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we take a whole stack of incredible sources and really distill them down into the most potent insights, hopefully, just for you. Today, we're embarking on a journey into a truly profound and, let's be honest, often counterintuitive idea. Just imagine for a moment, if you will, the vast, boundless cosmos, right? Shimmering with billions upon billions of stars, planets, galaxies. It's just, well, overwhelmingly magnificent in its scale, isn't it? Okay, now imagine someone asked you to find those very stars, not by gazing up at the limitless night sky, which seems logical, but by looking intently at an empty, seemingly barren canvas-like, a plain tarp laid out right in front of you. Sounds, well, impossible, maybe even absurd, like a fool's errand, you know. But this captivating image, searching for stars on an empty tarp, that's actually our guide today. It introduces our central theme, discovering profound truth, guidance, even a direct connection to what many traditions call the divine. Not out there the external grandeur we usually seek, but within the unexpected quietude of our own inner experience.
Exactly. And this deep dive is really all about exploring a pretty radical and transformative approach to understanding ourselves and our connection to a higher awareness or inner light, as some traditions put it. This path, it's often discovered through intense inner focus and profound stillness, what many diverse spiritual practices actually refer to as a way of silence. It's an approach that frequently steps outside conventional structures, creeds or liturgies, leading instead to a direct, unmediated encounter with this inner wisdom that, apparently resides within each of us. So we're going to explore various methods and the philosophical underpinnings that help us quiet the relentless noise of the external world and, maybe more importantly, the internal chatter of the mind, the goal. So we can finally perceive and listen to that often subtle inner guidance. And critically, we'll look at how this profound inner stillness isn't just some personal retreat, navel gazing, but something that can powerfully shape our actions and interactions, leading to a more just and compassionate engagement with the world around us.
Okay, so our mission today is really to distill the essence of how diverse thinkers, from ancient mystics whose writings predate modern psychology all the way to contemporary spiritual teachers, have described this path to inner knowledge and its transformative power. We want to help you navigate the sheer information overload out there, not by giving you even more to think about, but maybe by offering a unique lens, a way to find what's truly resonant within yourself, helping you distinguish between, passing noise and enduring truth. We'll draw some surprising connections across these seemingly disparate texts to reveal what looks like a universal human quest for inner clarity and an ultimate unifying truth, showing you perhaps that these stars we're talking about have been there all along, just waiting to be seen on the vast, unconditioned canvas of your own consciousness. Okay, let's really unpack this concept of inner awareness because, it can sound quite abstract. But we're starting our journey with something very immediate, very visceral, an experience of our inner life that's profoundly accessible, like right now. Eckhart Tolle, in his work, he offers this fascinating exercise to kick things off, one that immediately bypasses the intellect. It's quite clever. He suggests, just for a moment, closing your eyes and simply feeling the subtle aliveness within your hands. Now, here's the crucial part. Don't ask your mind what it feels. It'll probably just tell you it can't feel anything or, demand something more interesting to think about.
Right, the mind gets bored easily with subtlety.
Exactly. Instead, go directly to your hands with your raw, unfiltered attention. Just feel them. You might notice a slight tingling sensation at first, maybe a warmth, a subtle vibration, or just a general feeling of energy. And if you hold your attention there for a little while, Tully says, that sense of aliveness will intensify. It'll become more palpable. You can then gently expand this awareness to your feet and gradually to your entire body until you're aware of what he calls a global sense of aliveness. It's a direct sensory awareness, a kind of precognitive perception of life inside, a direct connection to your physical being, totally bypassing the usual mental commentary.
And what's truly fascinating here, I think, is that this isn't really a mental exercise in the conventional sense at all. You're not thinking about your hands. You're, as you said, going to your hands directly with your awareness, with your felt sense. Our minds are often just so busy, so accustomed to narrating every single aspect of our experience that we often lose touch with direct sensation itself. We're perpetually caught in a story about what's happening rather than just experiencing it.
Yeah, that rings true.
So this immediate precognitive awareness that Tolle describes, it's really an accessible and powerful starting point for Well, for anyone, it's about tuning into the subtle inherent vibrancy of your physical being, a foundational step for perceiving that deeper life inside that Tolle talks about. It's a simple yet profound way to bypass the incessant chatter of the mind and ground yourself firmly in the present moment, in the actual experience of being alive right now. Like tuning into a subtle frequency that's always been there, just, beneath the surface noise.
Speaking of that incessant chatter, Tolle also gives us a really crucial distinction to help us understand ourselves better. It's about separating what we truly are from that often dominant voice in the head, which, well, he calls the ego. He defines the ego as the unobserved mind, the voice in the head which pretends to be you, and crucially also the unobserved emotions that are the body's reaction to what the voice in the head is saying.
Right, it's the whole package.
Exactly. It's this internal monologue, often unexamined and automatic, that shapes so much of our perceived reality, our self-image, our emotional landscape, creating the narrative we often mistake for who we truly are. This idea of the ego as an unobserved mind pretending to be us, it suggests kind of subtle deception happening within our own experience, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, and it highlights what Tolle calls a vicious circle that many of us perhaps completely unknowingly get trapped in. So dysfunctional thinking that originates from that unobserved egoic voice, it creates negative emotions in the body, fear, anger, resentment, anxiety, whatever it is. Then, those very emotions feed energy back to the thoughts that created them in the first place, reinforcing them.
Ah, okay, the feedback loop.
Precisely. It becomes a self-sustaining loop, a kind of internal echo chamber of what Tolle terms emotional thinking and emotional story-making. It's not just a detached thought anymore, it's a thought charged with potent emotion, which then just perpetuates more of the same, often amplifying it. If you connect this to the bigger picture, you can easily see how this leads to habitual, often destructive patterns of thinking and feeling that keep us from true presence and, well, peace. Which raises an important question for you, the listener. How often do you find yourself caught in this very loop, where your thoughts and feelings seem to endlessly fuel each other, driving you further and further into a particular emotional narrative, sometimes for hours or even days?
Yeah, it's almost like having a particularly verbose, unsolicited podcast playing in your head 24/7, isn't it?
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
So, okay, if the ego is this relentless, noisy internal commentator, constantly shaping our reality and trapping us in these emotional loops, how do we ever step out of its grip? Is there like a different way to perceive ourselves, a different vantage point beyond this story-making machine? This is where Michael A. Singer offers a truly liberating perspective, I think. He states that true personal growth is about transcending the part of you that is not okay and needs protection.
Hmm.
And the method for this transcendence, by constantly remembering that you are the one inside that notices the voice talking. It's such a subtle but utterly fundamental shift in perspective. You're not the voice, you're the one hearing it. You're not the thought, you're the one observing it. This feels like that moment of realizing you're not actually trapped in the mental monologue you thought you were living inside. What is it about that silent aspect that makes it such a powerful doorway to the depths?
That's a crucial observation because what's truly fascinating, like you said, is the paradox it reveals. The one who watches the voice is always silent. This silent observer is precisely a doorway to the depths of your being. It's the launching ground, he says, for true spiritual awakening, because it reveals a dimension of yourself that is inherently peaceful, totally untouched by the mental clamor. And Singer pushes this even further, suggesting a really radical shift in identity. He says, we're not who we thought we were, and this is a direct quote, not even a human being, but just happen to be watching one. Now, this isn't meant to diminish our humanity, I don't think, but rather to highlight a deeper, more fundamental identity. This shift from identifying with the fleeting, finite mind, the ever-changing movie playing on the screen, to the silent, observing consciousness, the unchanging screen itself, is what can potentially move us from the finite to the infinite. It's really the core of many, many spiritual traditions, realizing that the essence of who you are is the awareness itself, not the content of that awareness. Imagine trying to identify a river by just one specific ripple. It's always changing, right? But the riverbed itself, the flow, that's a different story. This is that unchanging riverbed of consciousness.
Okay, this sounds incredibly liberating, I have to say. But what about the difficult parts of life? The inevitable encounters with pain, loss, discomfort. How does the silent awareness handle that? Tolle offers a really profound insight here, suggesting that pain itself can actually be an opportunity for deepening this presence. He says, every time you're present when the pain body arises, some of the pain body's negative emotional energy will burn up and become transmuted into presence. So So instead of resisting pain or allowing it to just overwhelm us, our conscious, non-judgmental presence can actually dissolve its hold. It's a pretty radical invitation, isn't it, to transform suffering into a catalyst for deeper being. Can you elaborate a bit on what Tolle means by pain body here? It sounds like it's more than just, a fleeting moment of sadness.
Yes, that's a good point. Tolle's pain body is indeed more than just feeling pain in the moment. He describes it as an accumulation of past emotional pain, almost like a semi-autonomous energetic entity within us. Think of it as a kind of separate presence, a reservoir of old hurts, grief, anger, trauma that lies dormant most of the time, but it's ready to be triggered by certain circumstances or thoughts.
Ah, okay. Like an old wound flaring up.
Exactly. And when it's activated, it seeks to perpetuate its own existence by generating more negative emotions and thoughts. That's its fuel. Recognizing this is crucial because it allows us to see that we're not just sad or angry in that moment. Sometimes it's actually the pain body that has activated, seeking to perpetuate its own existence through our suffering, creating that vicious circle we talked about earlier. And connecting this to the bigger picture, Singer echoes this beautifully, stating, "When you are comfortable with pain passing through you, you will be free."
Comfortable with pain. That's a high bar.
It is, but he explains that if we relax instead of closing around pain, meaning if we meet it with open awareness instead of resistance, contraction, or trying to suppress it, the blocked emotional energy releases naturally. This isn't about ignoring pain or pretending it's not there. It's about not clinging to it, not resisting its natural flow through you. When you allow pain to move through you without that resistance, you discover what Singer calls an ocean of love behind all of this fear and pain that can actually sustain you. This profoundly beautiful inner force replaces your relationship with inner pain and disturbance, allowing peace and love essentially to run your life. So it leads to the question, what would it mean for you, the listener, to not be afraid of yourself, even of your own pain? How might that fundamental shift, moving from resistance to acceptance of emotional pain, change your daily interactions, your internal landscape, and your very sense of freedom in the world? It's a challenging, but I think incredibly potent question.
Okay, so moving from the recognition of this inner awareness, this quiet space Tolle talks about, the natural next step is, how do we actually cultivate it? Right. How do we make it a consistent presence in our lives? This brings us to the practices, the active engagement with stillness that allows us to find and, polish those hidden stars on our inner tarp. Eckhart Tolle, again, offers a simple yet profoundly effective technique. Being aware of your breathing, he says, takes attention away from thinking and creates space. He suggests simply noticing the sensation of the breath, the air moving in and out, the slight expansion and contraction of the chest and abdomen. Just one conscious breath, or maybe two or three, taken many times a day whenever you remember, is enough to interrupt the uninterrupted succession of one thought after another and bring some vital space into your life. It's like an immediate anchor to the present moment, a gentle way to disengage from the relentless mental stream and return to a state of simple awareness.
That's a really crucial observation because this seemingly simple practice deeply resonates with other profound traditions as well. John Kabat-Zinn, who's a real pioneer in mindfulness, reinforces this by saying that meditation is synonymous with the practice of non-doing.
Non-doing, okay.
Yeah, he emphasizes that we aren't practicing to make things perfect or to do things perfectly or even to achieve some special state. Rather, the practice helps us grasp and realize the fact that things already are perfect, perfectly what they are. This involves holding the present moment in its fullness without imposing anything extra on it, without judgment or a desire for it to be different in any way.
So it's not about striving for perfection, but seeing the perfection that's already there.
Exactly. It's not about achieving a different state, but about accepting the present state as is. There's that Zen koan about the pot-au-feu. When you boil beef and vegetables, are you cooking the meat or are you cooking the broth? The point isn't really to resolve the question intellectually, but to appreciate the simultaneous enrichment, the holistic process itself in its as-is perfection. This non-dualistic approach, embracing the completeness of what is, allows for a deep sense of calm, free from the striving and dissatisfaction that often characterize our mental activity. It's about letting the inner tarp simply be, without trying to frantically paint anything on it.
As we cultivate this inner space, this capacity for non-doing and simple presence, we might begin to navigate what some ancient texts describe as a deeper, more mysterious inner landscape. There's the synonymous 14th century English mystical text, The Cloud of Unknowing, which speaks to this profound journey. It recommends a pretty radical detachment from outer sensations, from everything that comes through our physical senses, to concentrate instead on ideal things. The author suggests a graduated series of efforts to imagine holy scenes, like episodes from the life of Christ perhaps, which eventually leads to a state where imagery may fall away entirely. It sounds like a path toward an experience that transcends all mental constructs, all images, even sacred ones. Expert, this concept of dark contemplation sounds quite intriguing, maybe even a bit forbidding. Could you help us unpack it?
Yeah, dark contemplation, it does sound a bit ominous, doesn't it? But it's a vital concept in the journey toward pure inner awareness. It's not about being in the dark literally, of course. It's more about experiencing the divine without the usual mental pictures, concepts, or narratives we normally cling to. Imagine trying to see the faint stars at noon, the sun's overwhelming brilliance, which in this metaphor represents our usual thoughts or ideas about God or spiritual concepts, actually obscures them.
Ah, okay. The light gets in the way.
Precisely. Dark contemplation is like waiting for night, for all that mental light, all those concepts and images to recede, so you can perceive a deeper, non-conceptual reality, a direct apprehension of the divine. Mystical teachers, the text says, are unanimous that in this state, we receive this mystical knowledge of God clothed in none of the kinds of images our mind makes use of in other circumstances. It's a direct, non-conceptual knowing. The author of The Cloud explicitly warns against curiosity, of cunning, and of natural knowledge in this specific work, emphasizing that our intellect is just insufficient for this particular journey. If a thought arises, even one that asks, "What seekest thou?" the prescribed answer is a simple, humble God that thou would have, in him thou hast no skill. You admit your lack of intellectual grasp.
So even holy thoughts can be distractions here.
Yes, that's the tricky part. Even seemingly holy thoughts, like meditating on God's kindness or his passion, can be a distraction in this specific practice, leading one to jangle ever more and more till he bring thee lower. Basically, getting lost in thoughts about God instead of experiencing God directly. The key, then, according to the text, is a stirring of love, a pure intention and devotion to tread him fast down, meaning to gently but firmly move beyond even spiritual imagery and intellectual understanding. The wisdom that comes from this is described as sweet tasting, not because it's sugary, but because it brings a profound internal satisfaction and clear understanding that comes home so clearly to the inmost parts of our soul. It's a wisdom felt, not just thought, which leads to a really practical question for you, the listener. How do you differentiate between mental noise, even seemingly positive or spiritual thoughts, and this kind of true, non-conceptual inner guidance? What does it mean to seek something beyond intellectual comprehension, a wisdom that is felt rather than merely understood?
This profound inner work, this dark contemplation, it clearly demands a disciplined mind and a kind of unwavering watchfulness. The Way of a Pilgrim, which is a classic Russian Orthodox text, vividly describes such a practice. It focuses on what it calls guarding your mind with extreme watchfulness. As soon as a hostile thought, meaning any thought that pulls you away from inner peace or divine connection, is noticed, you must immediately refute it, but also hasten to call on Christ the Lord through a constant inward prayer like the Jesus prayer. It's an active moment-by-moment engagement with your inner state, constantly redirecting attention and intention, not letting any distracting thought take root unchallenged.
And this watchfulness is absolutely crucial because, especially in the initial stages, the text warns that waves of thoughts, more numerous than before, will head in your direction.
So it gets harder before it gets easier.
Often, yes. The mind, accustomed to its patterns of wandering and distraction, will actively resist this new discipline. It throws up more noise, more images, more stories. It doesn't give up easily. But the text promises that with sustained prayer and watchfulness, the pure heart becomes a heaven for the intellect, with its own sun, moon, and stars. And through mystical contemplation and ecstasy, the heart becomes a vessel for the uncontainable God. It describes this incredible transformation where the inner landscape becomes clear and radiant, capable of receiving divine light directly. And if we connect this to the broader spectrum of traditions, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali describe samadhi, a state of deep meditative absorption, as the continuous, effortless linkage of the attention to a higher reality, which is inherently without harmful emotions.
Effortless linkage. That sounds appealing.
It does, but it doesn't come without effort initially. It's a state of deep absorption where your attention, through diligent practice, naturally and without struggle, rests on that inner awareness, on your true nature, which is inherently peaceful and free from the turbulence of the mind and emotions. This state, characterized by purity and an absence of harmful emotions, requires diligently practicing Hatha Yoga austerities proficiently to achieve that purity, ultimately leading to Kaivalyam. Kaivallium is described as the separation of the spirit from the mento-emotional energy, a state of liberation from the entanglements of mind and emotion. So whether it's through Christian prayer and watchfulness or yogic discipline and austerity, the core effort seems to be toward purification and unwavering focus on a higher inner reality, creating that sanctuary of silence within.
But this path, like any journey of self-discovery or spiritual awakening, it seems to come with its own unique pitfalls. Theologia Germanica, another profound medieval mystical text, offers a really stark warning about spiritual pride and high-mindedness. This arises, it explains, when someone begins to believe their work is altogether finished and that they are somehow above all other men in their spiritual attainment.
The holier-than-thou syndrome.
Exactly. This leads to a false peace and satisfaction with himself, a dangerous illusion of having reached the summit when in fact there's still much to learn and integrate. Expert, it's easy to see how one might fall into this false peace after experiencing significant inner shifts or breakthroughs. In our modern context, where self-care and self-affirmation are so heavily emphasized, how do we guide listeners to distinguish between genuine self-love and self-acceptance and this kind of dangerous spiritual arrogance that Theologia Germanica warns against?
That's a fantastic and extremely important distinction to make because the line can feel subtle sometimes. This is a crucial point, and it warns against what Theologia Germanica calls false, lawless freedom. Such pride disregards scripture nor instruction or anything of the kind, believing oneself to be totally beyond guidance or external wisdom, essentially becoming a law unto oneself. It's a state where all self-will is sin, and there is no sin but what springeth therefrom, meaning any desire or action that arises solely from the egoic self, from that separate sense of I want, rather than from alignment with a greater divine will or truth. Truly godlike individuals, on the other hand, according to this text, only complain of sin or separation from that divine will. They feel such a sore pain and grief about it that they would rather die 100 deaths than endure it.
Wow, that's intense.
It is. Their aspiration is to align completely with the one perfect good and the one eternal will, recognizing that any personal will apart from this is the root of all transgression, all suffering. This really highlights the continuous, unending nature of inner work and the profound humility required, even for those on an apparently advanced spiritual path. It's a powerful reminder that genuine self-realization isn't about superiority or becoming exempt from discipline or indulging in some kind of inflated self-importance. Instead, it's about aligning with a universal unifying truth that actually dissolves the separate sense of self, leading paradoxically to an even deeper sense of interconnection and service rather than self-aggrandizement. The key, I think, is in the direction of the movement. Is it toward greater self-importance or toward greater unity, humility, and connection?
So when we diligently clear away the mental clutter, when we cultivate this profound inner stillness and maybe navigate these subtle landscapes of dark contemplation and vigilant prayer, what is it that we actually find? What stars begin to shine on our apparently empty tarp? Eckhart Tolle describes it as discovering the unconditioned nature of consciousness. He suggests that when consciousness is no longer totally absorbed by thinking, some of it remains in its formless, unconditioned original state. This is inner space. It's presented as a fundamental aspect of our being, prior to thought, prior to form, prior to any personal story we tell ourselves. Think of it like the pure, clear screen of a cinema. All the thoughts, emotions, and experiences are like the vivid, dramatic, or maybe mundane movies projected onto that screen. But the screen itself remains untouched, formless, always present beneath whatever film is playing. Tolle's insight is that you are that screen, not the movie. Expert, this concept of consciousness being unconditioned is truly profound, isn't it? It challenges our usual sense of identity.
It really is, and this concept of unconditioned consciousness is indeed fundamental to so many spiritual and philosophical inquiries. Sam Harris, who approaches this from a more secular neuroscientific perspective, notes that consciousness seems to be conceptually irreducible. You can't really break it down into simpler parts. Any attempt to define it in terms of something else like brain activity or information processing ultimately leads to a lexical circle, basically defining it with terms that presuppose it. This suggests it's truly basic to our thinking and our being.
It's the ground floor, essentially.
Exactly. Many philosophers, Harris argues, often conflate consciousness, pure subjective awareness, with other aspects of cognition like attention, self-awareness, or memory. But in doing so, they miss its fundamental, irreducible nature. This suggests that the inner light, or the stars we've been discussing, isn't something created or acquired through effort. It's the primordial, unconditioned ground of our being, a reality so fundamental that words really struggle to capture its essence. As Aldous Huxley keenly observed, the experience of seeing the sky or having neuralgia is incommunicable. The best we can do is to say blue or pain, in the hope that those who hear us may have had experiences similar to our own, and so be able to supply their own version of the meaning.
Right. Language falls short.
It does. If even ordinary sensory experiences are hard to truly convey, how much more so is the unconditioned, formless nature of consciousness itself? It's the silent awareness that witnesses all experience, yet remains completely untouched by it.
Okay, so when we connect with this unconditioned consciousness, this silent screen of awareness, a profound realization often emerges alongside it. The inherent unity of all things and, maybe paradoxically, the impermanence of all forms. Conversations with God states this quite directly and boldly. Impermanence is the only truth. Nothing is permanent. All is changing in every instant, in every moment. Now, this isn't necessarily presented as a bleak observation about loss or decay, but more as a foundational truth about the dynamic, ever-evolving nature of reality itself. Everything we perceive as solid and separate is, in fact, in constant flux.
And this impermanence is deeply, deeply interwoven with the concept of unity, creating this beautiful tapestry of constant interconnected change. The text elaborates further, stating, "We are all one. If we are all one, no individuation of us is alien to itself."
Okay, unpack that a bit.
It means that every individual being, every apparently separate entity, is in essence an inseparable part of the greater whole, a unique expression of the unified field of consciousness. We're all waves on the same ocean. Therefore, the text suggests, the process of remembering, reuniting with God, or becoming once again one with the all, with the collective, is a process you call evolution.
So evolution isn't just biological.
Not solely, in this view. It's also a profound spiritual journey of remembering our inherent oneness, of reintegrating into the larger conscious unity from which we arose. And if we connect this to the deeper wisdom of Eastern thought, the Bhagavad Gita expresses a very similar non-dualistic perspective that resonates beautifully here. It states that the realization that there is no existence besides Kent is the platform of peace and fearlessness. Now, in this context, Kent represents the ultimate reality, the all-pervading divine essence. A steadily devoted soul, the Gita says, attains unadulterated peace because he offers the result of all activities to me.
Offering the results.
Yes, it resonates perfectly. When you understand that all is one, that the divine is the ultimate, all-encompassing reality, then all sense of separation, fear, and individual striving dissolves into a deep state of peace and unity. Why? Because you understand your true nature is already part of that wholeness. There's nothing to gain or lose, fundamentally.
With this realization of unity and the unconditioned nature of consciousness, there's also often a profound transformation in how we perceive and interact with the external world. Ralph Waldo Emerson, the transcendentalist, articulates this beautifully. Not in nature, but in man is all the beauty and worth he sees. The world is very empty and is indebted to this gilding, exalting soul for all its pride. This is almost revolutionary, isn't it? It suggests that our internal landscape is the projector, and the external world is just the screen waiting for our consciousness to imbue it with meaning. It's saying the external world gains its luster, its very meaning, its perceived beauty, from our internal state, from this gilding, exalting soul, as he calls it.
It's a profound act of co-creation, isn't it? A deeply intimate relationship between inner and outer. Emerson describes how the use of symbols has a certain power of emancipation and exhilaration for all men. We seem to be touched by a wand which makes us dance and run about happily like children. We find within their world another world, or nest of worlds. Think of it like a musician. The notes on the page exist, right? But the music, the soul-stirring quality that comes from the musician's interpretation, their feeling, their skill, their inner attunement.
Right, the same notes can sound completely different.
Exactly. Similarly, the world exists factually, but its meaning, its beauty, its sacredness are often activated, gilded by our inner state. C.S. Lewis gives us a vivid glimpse of this in The Great Divorce. When one character arrives in this new, more real realm, they don't just see a waterfall. They perceive its sound as giants' laughter. And its sheer scale isn't just described as large, it's taken by their sensibility as a well-built ship takes a huge wave.
Wow, that's vivid.
It really is. And it's not just poetic description, it suggests a profound perceptual shift. When your inner self is attuned and expansive, your capacity for experience itself expands, turning a seemingly mundane or simply factual reality into something imbued with wonder, deeper significance, and profound connection. It's as if the world is constantly waiting for us to bring our inner light to it, to illuminate its hidden stars, its deeper dimensions.
This expanded perception, born from deep inner work, can also lead to a truly universalistic vision, one that transcends narrow individual or, tribal boundaries. Black Elk, the revered Oglala Sioux holy man, shared a powerfully resonant vision where the sacred hoop means the continents of a world and the people shall stand as one. It's a vision of global unity and interconnectedness rooted in a profound personal spiritual experience, a direct insight into the fundamental oneness of all humanity and all creation.
And this notion of a universalistic vision is powerfully echoed across cultures and disciplines, interestingly. Rollo May, the existential psychologist in The Courage to Create, discusses the Greek god Apollo. Apollo represents light, reason, and insight, but he's also significantly the god of healing and well-being. May notes that the most cogent point of all about Apollo is his guidance to a vital formative age. And he says, for the one who participates in them, symbols and myths carry their own healing power. Black Elk's vision, as interpreted by Neihardt in the book, beautifully transforms his specific Lakota vision into a universal message for all humankind, where, as you quoted, the sacred hoop means the continents of the world and the people shall stand as one. This idea that a deep personal vision, a direct experience of inner truth, can become universally resonant and carry a healing power for the collective is incredibly powerful, I think. So, if consciousness is irreducible and we are all fundamentally one, as these diverse texts seem to suggest, how might your inner work, your personal quest for truth and unity through silence, contribute not just to your own well-being, but to a healing power for the collective? How does your individual light connect to the universal light, and in what ways does it help illuminate the common tarp of humanity? It's a big question.
Okay, now what happens when this profound inner awareness, these glistening inner stars we've been talking about, begin to radiate outwards? How does the way of silence actually translate into action, into our daily lives and interactions? Because it's one thing to cultivate this profound inner awareness, right? To find that stillness within. But what happens when that quiet wisdom, those inner stars, begin to actually manifest in the noise and complexity of our daily lives and our relationships? Conversations with God offers 3 basic wisdoms that apparently emerge from this awakened state, guiding how we then operate in the world. 1, we are all one. 2, there's enough. 3, there's nothing we have to do.
That third one always jumps out.
It really does. There's nothing we have to do. It sounds so radical.
Yeah.
But it's not about passivity, apparently, but about a fundamental shift in motivation. The text explains, if you come from happiness, you do certain things because you are happy, as opposed to the old paradigm in which you did things that you hoped would make you happy. It's a profound transformation from constantly seeking to simply being.
That's such a crucial and potentially transformative insight, because what's fascinating here is the profound implication of that shift. Everything changes. Everything turns around, the text says, when you come from being rather than seeking to be. This isn't about becoming passive or disengaged at all. Rather, it's about acting from an inherent state of wisdom, wholeness, and love, instead of striving to achieve those states through external actions or accomplishments. The text asserts that this shift in being can cause problems to simply evaporate because you're no longer operating from a place of perceived lack, need, or struggle.
Because the problem was rooted in the seeking.
Often, yes, or in the perspective of lack. Instead, you're recognizing that you already are love, happiness, wisdom, whatever positive state you were seeking, and your actions then flow effortlessly, spontaneously, and joyfully from that truth, rather than being a frantic means to an end. It's like a flower blooming because it's its nature to bloom, not because it hopes to become beautiful by blooming. This raises an important question for you, the listener. How can you begin to practice this being in your daily life, rather than constantly doing to achieve a desired state or outcome? What would it look like to act from a place of inherent wholeness rather than external seeking, and how might that alter your sense of purpose and fulfillment day to day?
This inherent interconnectedness, discovered through inner awareness, also extends powerfully to our relationship with the natural world, doesn't it? Fostering a profound ethics of, reciprocity. Robin Wall Kimmerer, in her beautiful book, Braiding Sweetgrass, emphasizes that restoration is imperative for healing the earth, but reciprocity is imperative for long-lasting, successful restoration. She beautifully states, we restore the land and the land restores us. It's a symbiotic relationship, a recognition that our well-being is just inextricably linked to the well-being of the entire planet, and that our relationship with nature isn't one of dominance or extraction, but of mutual giving and receiving.
That's such a profound shift in perspective. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, someone like Jason Hickel in his work on degrowth calls for recovering a radical intimacy with other beings. He explains that this is not about limits, but interconnectedness, a perspective that really upends the dusty old tropes of 20th century environmentalism, which often framed environmental action as a series of sacrifices or limitations we have to endure.
Right, the hair shirt approach.
Exactly. Instead, Hickel reframes it as a move towards deeper relationship and belonging, something inherently enriching, not depleting. And this isn't just abstract theory. If we are all one, as Conversations with God posits, then our actions towards each other and the earth fundamentally change. It becomes illogical, even self-destructive, to do otherwise. We cease treating each other poorly, ideally. We understand the imperative to share resources, and we recognize that damaging the environment is quite literally damaging ourselves because we're part of it. If we understand that we are in this world, but not of it, meaning we identify more with the eternal, unconditioned consciousness rather than just our fleeting physical forms, we can even use our understanding of impermanence, our illusion of death, as a key to more life, more engagement, less fear. This perspective frees us to engage with the world without grasping, without needing to control or possess, allowing for a relationship of true reciprocity and care with all of existence, because we see ourselves reflected in everything.
This journey of inner awareness, though, as we've touched upon, often requires navigating significant adversity and even profound suffering. Paradoxically, it seems that very suffering can be a crucible for immense strength and an unshakable sense of self-knowledge. James Baldwin, in his incredibly powerful work, The Fire Next Time, makes a searing observation. People who cannot suffer can never grow up, can never discover who they are.
Wow, that's blunt.
It is. He argues that the individual who is forced each day to snatch his manhood, his identity out of the fire of human cruelty, knows something about himself and human life that no school on earth, and indeed no church, can teach. He achieves his own authority, and that is unshakable. It's a testament to the profound inner authority forged in the crucible of hardship.
That's such a powerful point, and what's fascinating here is how profound suffering seems to force one to look beneath appearances, to take nothing for granted, to hear the meaning behind the words. It just strips away illusions and reveals core truths, pushing an individual beyond superficialities. Baldwin attributes to Negroes, on the whole, in his experience, a tendency to have allowed themselves to feel so little hatred, explaining that eventually hatred becomes too heavy a sack to carry.
Just exhausting.
Exactly. This perspective, forged in enduring unspeakable cruelty and injustice, allows for a deeper understanding and a release from destructive emotions, choosing to carry dignity rather than vengeance. However, this raises an important and complex question, one that William James brings up in The Varieties of Religious Experience. He notes that saintly conduct would be the most perfect conduct conceivable in an environment where all were saints already. But in an environment where few are saints and many the exact reverse of saints, it must be ill-adapted.
Right. It might not work in the real world.
He notes that sometimes virtues of sympathy, charity, and non-resistance may be, and often have been, manifested in excess, to the point where the powers of darkness have systematically taken advantage of them. So this highlights the really practical dilemma of living these profound inner truths like overcoming hatred and embracing non-resistance in an often unjust and frankly dangerous world. How do we integrate Baldwin's assertion of unshakable authority forged in suffering with James's caution that pure saintliness might be ill-adapted to a world where few are saints? Is there a practical path that balances inner peace with effective, discerning action without becoming naive or vulnerable to real dangers? That's the tightrope walk, isn't it?
It's a vital tension to explore, absolutely. It points to the difference between our internal state and our external engagement, maybe. And this brings us to consider the nature of authentic faith and purpose that might emerge from such an inner journey, one that has to navigate both profound peace and worldly challenges. Charles Taylor, in Our Secular Age, suggests that genuine faith isn't solely about our own flourishing or self-serving comfort, although that might be a side effect, but it's fundamentally about God or the divine truth itself for its own sake. This kind of faith, Taylor explains, leads us to visit orphans and widows in their affliction and to keep oneself unstained from the world. It's faith manifested in selfless action, a direct outcome of that inner connection.
Absolutely. And these actions, caring for the vulnerable, maintaining personal integrity amidst worldly temptations, are presented as sure signs of religious affection, reflecting genuine holiness, sacrifice, and love. It's about following the risen Christ in his specific context and not just treating our therapeutic needs. A really critical distinction, I think, from faith is merely a means to personal comfort, security, or a kind of spiritual self-help program.
It's directed outward.
Yes. And if we connect this to the broader picture, Catherine of Siena, in her dialogue, describes a soul that deeply desires to flee from people for purity and solitude, to guard its inner space. But it also longs to plunge right into the heart of the world to see if by doing this, it could help one soul to praise God more.
That tension again.
Exactly. This inherent tension highlights a deep, unselfish desire to serve, moving beyond just personal salvation or retreat to a profound yearning for the collective spiritual good. It's not about self-preservation and isolation, but about radiating the inner light outward into the complexities of human suffering and need without being consumed or corrupted by them. It's a dynamic, ongoing balance.
And this inner wisdom, born from silence, it isn't reserved for grand spiritual gestures or profound philosophical debates. It seems to manifest equally in mindful living, in the everyday, mundane stuff. An everlasting meal gives us these beautiful, grounding examples of this conscious engagement, like stewarding meat not just to cook it, but to enrich both the meat itself and the cooking medium, being careful not to deplete either resource, or keeping polenta on low heat for future meals, a kind of mindful economy of grace and foresight that honors resources and interconnectedness. It's about bringing intention and awareness to the most basic tasks.
What's fascinating here is how this very domestic, grounded wisdom connects to seemingly disparate fields, revealing a universal principle at play. Musashi, the legendary Japanese swordsman in the Book of Five Rings, describes his way of combat strategy as requiring conscientious training and, crucially, to continually employ this mode of observation in your daily life so that you can apply it in any situation.
Observation in daily life.
Yes. It's not just about lofty theories or intricate techniques practiced in isolation, but about a deep study and adaptation to circumstances, recognizing the flow of energy and the interconnectedness of action, moment by moment, in everything you do. So whether you're in the kitchen, carefully stewarding resources and patiently building flavors over time, or on the battlefield, making split-second strategic decisions informed by profound awareness, the underlying principle is the same. Cultivated inner awareness informs skillful, effective, and ideally graceful action. It transforms mere activity into an art, showing how inner wisdom doesn't just change our perception, it transforms our very way of being and doing in the world, allowing us to find those stars even in the most ordinary of tarps.
Hashtag tag outro.
So, as we bring this deep dive to a close, let's remember our opening image, searching for stars on an empty tarp. We've explored how finding profound truth and guidance in silence isn't really about encountering emptiness or absence, but more about diligently clearing away the endless distractions, both external and internal, to reveal an ever-present inner light, a fundamental awareness that is already whole and complete. From Eckhart Tolle's subtle tingling in your hands, that direct sensory experience of aliveness, to Michael A. Singer's silent witness observing the mind, to the ancient wisdom of the cloud of unknowing inviting us beyond all conceptual thought, and Black Elk's expansive universal vision, it seems diverse traditions consistently point to the same universal journey, a profound quest to discover the radiant, interconnected truth that resides within each of us. It's a journey that redefines our perception of self, of others, and of our interconnected place in the cosmos, revealing maybe that the stars were always there, just waiting for us to quiet our gaze and truly see them.
And in a world that's constantly seeking external validation and solutions, forever chasing the next big idea, the next piece of information, or the next achievement to define itself, what would happen if you truly embraced the radical idea that the way to get there is to be there, as Conversations with God suggests? What if the constant striving could genuinely be replaced by an inherent sense of well-being? And what if, as The Way of a Pilgrim describes, your pure heart becomes a heaven for the intellect, with its own sun, moon, and stars, transforming your inner world into this radiant sanctuary of wisdom? How might that fundamental shift from ceaseless seeking to profound being, from external acquisition to internal revelation, transform your ongoing quest for knowledge, your sense of purpose, and your very place in the world? We'll leave you to consider this, allowing perhaps the silence itself to reveal the stars that have been shining within you all along, just waiting for your quiet attention.